Who killed Adolf Hitler? Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in a small Austrian town called Braunau am Inn. His parents were Alois Hitler, a customs officer, and Clara Hitler. Adolf was their fourth child, but two of his older siblings had already passed away. His father, Alois, was a strict and authoritarian man, while his mother, Clara, was caring and protective. As a young boy, Hitler showed an early interest in art, spending hours sketching and painting. He dreamed of becoming a famous artist, but his father wanted him to become a government official like himself. This difference in their goals led to tension between Adolf and his father. His dreams of art school were crushed when he was rejected twice by the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, and this failure left a deep mark on him, making him more resentful. After his father passed away in 1903, Adolf moved to Vienna, hoping to find success as an artist. But life in Vienna was difficult. He struggled to support himself and lived in poverty, selling postcards of his artwork on the streets. During this time, Vienna was a place where many extreme political ideas were being discussed, including anti-Semitism, the belief that Jewish people were inferior. These ideas began to shape Hitler's views. In 1913, he moved to Munich, Germany, seeking a new start. Soon after, World War I broke out, and being eager to prove his loyalty to Germany, he joined the German army. He served on the front lines as a soldier and was wounded twice. Although he was not promoted to a higher rank, he earned the Iron Cross for bravery. As the war ended, Germany was already in chaos. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, forced Germany to accept blame for the war and imposed harsh penalties. This angered many Germans, and Hitler was among those who felt that the treaty was unjust. He believed that Germany's defeat was a result of internal enemies and sabotage. This made him yearn about how to restore Germany's greatness. He thereafter joined a small political group called the German Workers' Party in Munich, which later became the Nazi Party. As an orator, his powerful speaking ability helped him rise through the ranks of the party, and he quickly became the leader of the party. The Nazi Party, under Hitler's leadership, proposed to rebuild Germany into a powerful empire. His vision of the future was one where Germany would dominate Europe. By 1923, Hitler was 34 years old and was ready to take over Germany. He believed that he could seize control of the German government. He then attempted to overthrow the government in an event known as the Beer Hall Putsch. However, this attempt failed, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to prison. While in prison, he wrote his famous book Mein Kampf, in which he outlined his plans for Germany's future and his deeply racist and anti-Semitic views. He proposed that Germany needed more land to grow, and he developed a vision of expanding eastward to take land from other countries, especially the Soviet Union. He also lamented that Jews were the biggest obstacle to Germany's success and should be removed from society. After serving only a short time in prison, Hitler was released, and he began to rebuild the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party was growing in popularity as many Germans were frustrated with the country's economic troubles and the ongoing effects of the Treaty of Versailles. The Great Depression of 1929 made things even worse, and millions of Germans were out of work. Hitler then used this opportunity to promise restoration of Germany's pride and economy, and this message resonated with many people. In 1933, after years of political maneuvering and promises of a better future, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. At first, he worked within the system to gain more power, but quickly, he began to dismantle democratic institutions. He used events like the Reichstag fire in February 1933 as an excuse to limit civil rights and imprison political opponents. Over the next few months, Hitler passed laws that gave him complete control of Germany, effectively turning the country into a dictatorship. By 1934, when President Paul von Hindenburg died, Hitler declared himself Führer, or the supreme leader, of Germany. Immediately, he moved quickly to turn his vision of a powerful, racially pure Germany into reality. One of his first actions was to rebuild Germany's military, despite the restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. He introduced a program of military expansion, creating jobs for unemployed Germans and preparing for war. Germany began to rearm, and Hitler's aggressive foreign policy started to take shape. Hitler's main goal was to create more living space for Germans, a policy he called Lebensraum. This idea involved expanding Germany's borders and taking land from other countries, especially in Eastern Europe. In 1936, he sent troops into the Rhineland, a region that was supposed to remain demilitarized under the Treaty of Versailles, and when other countries did not stop him, he grew bolder. In 1938, he annexed Austria in what he called the Anschluss, and later that year, he demanded that Czechoslovakia hand over the Sudetenland, a region with a large German-speaking population. Britain and France, hoping to avoid war, agreed to his demands at the Munich conference, believing that Hitler would be satisfied. But Hitler had no intention of stopping there. In 1939, Hitler made a secret deal with Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. This agreement, known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, promised that Germany and the Soviet Union would not fight each other and that they would divide Poland between them. With this pact in place, Hitler invaded Poland on September 1, 1939. This invasion led Britain and France to declare war on Germany, marking the official start of World War II. Hitler's military strategy, called Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, was a fast and overwhelming attack using tanks, planes, and infantry. The strategy was highly effective, and within weeks, German forces conquered Poland. By the spring of 1940, Germany had taken control of Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and much of France. In June 1941, Hitler turned his attention to the Soviet Union, launching Operation Barbarossa, an invasion of the USSR. However, the war in Russia would prove to be disastrous. Despite early successes, German forces were not prepared for the harsh Russian winter, and the Soviets were able to push back. As the war raged on, Hitler's ideas became more extreme. One of his most horrible crimes was the Holocaust, a systematic attempt to kill all Jewish people, along with other groups that the Nazis considered inferior, including Romani people, disabled people, and political opponents. Millions of innocent people were murdered in concentration camps and death camps during this time. The war continued to go badly for Germany. In 1944, the Allies launched a massive invasion of France on D-Day, and by 1945, German forces were retreating on all fronts. Soviet forces pushed into Berlin from the east, while the Allies advanced from the west. The end of the war in Europe was near, and Hitler's empire was collapsing. By the spring of 1945, Berlin was surrounded by Soviet forces. The city, once the heart of Nazi Germany, was now in ruins, battered by bombs and under siege. Hitler, now isolated in his underground bunker, refused to leave. He was determined to stay in Berlin and fight until the end, but it was clear that the war was lost. Hitler's health had worsened, and he had become a shadow of the man who had once inspired millions. Inside the Führer bunker, Hitler spent his final days issuing orders to commanders who no longer had the strength or resources to carry them out. His once powerful speeches had turned into ramblings, and his decision-making was erratic. On April 29, 1945, Hitler married Eva Braun, his longtime companion, in a small, private ceremony. The ceremony was attended by a handful of witnesses, including his secretary, Martin Bormann, and the bunker's staff, Otto Gunsch. The next day, April 30th, Hitler and Eva took their own lives. At around 3:30 p.m., a gunshot echoed through the bunker. When Otto Gunsch entered the room, he found Hitler slumped on the sofa, a bullet wound to his temple, and a pistol at his side. Eva was beside him, lifeless from ingesting cyanide. In accordance with Hitler's wishes, their bodies were carried outside and burned to prevent them from being captured by the Soviets. Those who carried out the task, Gunsch, Bormann, and others, stood by in silence, watching as Adolf Hitler and his wife were reduced to ashes. By the time Soviet forces reached Berlin and discovered Hitler's remains, the war in Europe was over. However, some people actually believed he had escaped, fleeing to Argentina or some other distant refuge. Others speculated that the Führer bunker was part of an elaborate ruse, and that Hitler had survived in secrecy. But decades later, historians and forensic investigations have confirmed the truth about Hitler's death in the bunker.